Okay, you're away.
My mother's name was Laura Annie May. She was born in 1898 on the 28th of May. Her mother was named Emily May, and she had my mother out of wedlock, and her grandmother, which is Frederick May, brought my mother up, and he was a sergeant major, regimental sergeant major, and she grew up and she went to Upper House School, and then she worked at Bentl's in Farnham. It was a big store, and then also she worked in service for a while up at Igatch in a big farmhouse, and she only earned 2 and 6 a week, but she also lived in. And then she went to work at Aldershot in the field stores in a big government department, and then after that come out of the Navy in 1918, and then he went to work in the REs at Aldershot, and he went to work there for a number of years, about 30 some odd years, because he got the Imperial Medal. And my mother, my mum, she didn't go to work after that at all. You know, she never worked in any way.
What did your father do? He also used to sell some things with the army, didn't he?
Oh yes, my dad, in his spare time, he used to sell, because we had a shop, and in his spare time he used to go and follow the soldiers, which was on manoeuvres, because they didn't have a lot of barracks then. They went out on canvas, under canvas tents and that, and he used to go with they used to march along the roads for miles and miles, from Aldershot down to Salisbury Plains and all around, and right up to Yorkshire, all round. And Dad used to go and follow them when they stopped, and he used to sell them all these, cakes and teas and all the different things for him to outlet. So he done that, and Mum used to sometimes go with him. You know.
You said you had a shop. A shop?
A grocery? Like cigarettes and sweets and all that. Mum used to make her own ice cream, and all the soldiers used to come up on horseback. The red caps used to come up and to the shop, to buy their cigarettes and everything. And of course, then after that, we moved down to another house, which was down at Manor View. And then, of course, I grew up like in Manor View. Ruby died at 15, and there was only me and Teddy. And then, I went to work down into this service place, but you couldn't call it service really. It was just daily. And I went down there and stayed for 3 weeks. About 3 weeks I stayed there, but it wasn't really nice. They weren't very nice people and that, so Mum said, and Mum at the time was going hop picking in Farnham. There was big hop fields, and every year, about September, for about 3 weeks, they used to have hop picking. And of course, we all used to go. We used to have some fun there, We used to walk through Farnham Park about 7 o'clock in the morning, and then we used to pick these hops, and then they used to pick so many bushel for a shilling, and then we used to come all the way home again, get up in the next morning for about two or 3 weeks that was, but we did have some fun. So anyway, Mum was there and Dad was there. No, Mum was there with Teddy. And so she said, why not? She said, if you don't like it, she said, give it up and come with us. So that's what I did. But after that, I went to a little wool factory in Farnham in East Street. And again, that wasn't really suitable. So I left, and then I went down to Howe Laundry, and I worked there for about 4 years, which was very, very nice. And in the meantime, I'd went up to the Howell Institute, because it was all garrison in Aldershot, and there was just all the soldiers, you know, different regiments used to come up to the different villages. And so we went up to this evening social with Mum and Dad, and I'd been up before, and I'd seen Jack, which is my husband now, and then I of course liked him and that, so we more or less got together, and I asked my dad if he could walk me home, and he said yes. So that's how we really met, and he come down, and I went into the house, and he come down talking to me Mum and Dad. Next minute he was in the house, and he was invited up to tea on the Sunday. So, and after that we saw quite a lot of each other, because he was stationed in Aldershot, and he was actually in the big house in Cranwell Lane, near Cranwell Lane, working for Brigadier Norrie. And then then of course we got married. We courted for about 5 years. We were engaged at 17, and then at 19 we got married on the 23rd of September, but war broke out on the 3rd. But really we had our plans made for on the Christmas, but we had to go to Aldershot to get a special licence, because we had to bring the wedding forward, so we had to pay extra money because of getting a special licence to get married. So we got married, and we was married at Howe Church, and St John's Howe Church. And then of course Jack was home for about 3 or 4 weeks, then he had to go away, and then of course he'd come home, and then I fell for Brian, and then the war was naturally on at the time, and he was had to go abroad, but he never told me actually he was going abroad, because he wasn't allowed. But at what time, I knew he was going, but he never told me. But I worked in the laundry at the hospital for a while, and of course I knew I was going to have Brian, so I left, and then I had Brian. I was living with Mum and Dad at the time, and I had Brian, and he come from the to the hospital to fetch me and brought me home, and then he was there for about a week, and then he went off, and we never saw him anymore until about another 5 years. He was taken prisoner of war. But for 3 months I didn't know whether he was a prisoner of war or whether he was dead or anything. We just had a letter to say he was missing. And so after that I used to have letters from him, little letters and a little Christmas card, and photos. I had some photos from him, which was very nice. But he said he never got them from me, but I sent ever so many, and then went to special places and sent parcels to him, and they had different, up on the recreation ground they had all different fates, and that's sent to the prisoners of war, and money and, cigarettes. They put his name down because he was a bit in the village. And then we went, then after that, of course, my mum couldn't go to work, because she'd never gone to work since I was younger, so I went down to the laundry, the hospital laundry, and worked all through most of the time. Oh no, first I went over to a little place over where they used to have a cow shed, and the London people, Christie's, a big cosmetic firm, come down to there and made a big factory of it. So we went over to the cosmetic factory. They made lipsticks and lanolin cream and all the different things. And I went over there for about 4 months. Then my auntie was a manager at down in the she said, well, why don't you come down with me? So anyway, we went down. We used to go down every morning about 7 o'clock. My aunt and 2 aunts come down, and they used to call me in the morning because they had to pass my door. And we used to walk down, and sometimes the road was very, very slippery. But we didn't get no bus, no nothing, because there wasn't, nothing going at that time in the morning. So anyway, we used to walk down, walk back, and it was nice. We enjoyed it, And then, of course, we after that, for all them years, because when Brian was born, there was all the bombing about, and we had bombs up the road. We had bombs all around us, really. Runfold, they were bombed, and all the K's was killed. And there was a bomb just about, not far from where we lived, Shughul, and my dad dug a big dugout, and we had an Anderson shelter. And we used to have to go down to there, and it was at the time it was a bit scary, but we enjoyed it. We got over it. And then also after that, we was living with my mum. There wasn't no room hardly. We were only living in one room. And then of course Rodney was going to be born, you see. So I had Rodney, went down to the hospital and had him, come back, and Jack's Colonel-in-Chief sent a letter to the council to say that he was definitely one of the first to have a prefab, because the prefab, was just being built, and of course he had his name there. So we were lucky, we had one of the first of the prefabs, which was very nice. So we went down the prefabs and had everything nice, and we was really happy, very happy. And then of course Lorraine was born down the prefabs, and Rodney and Brian was born in the hospital, but Lane was born actually in the prefab. And then we went round to a house not far along. It was a bit brick house because because we had a girl. There was 2 boys and a girl. So we moved around to the house which we're living in now. We've been there 44 years.